All right, good morning, everyone, or good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Let me know where you're tuning in from, wherever you are in the world or in the country, in whatever country you're in. Let me know as you're tuning in. So today, the question is, how do we turn our reading into overcoming financial struggles, overcoming financial debt? So many people have debt, have financial struggles. It's almost universal. But the question is, how do we go from reading a book on these things, on these topics or different topics, and go from that to taking that and turning that into transformation for our debts and everything like that? I'm going to use my example here because I went from literally a six-figure debt, guys, a six-figure debt in terms of, well, let's get into some of the let's get the slides up here. I went from a six-figure debt in terms of credit cards, student loans, all of this stuff, to being really debt-free. I mean, debt-free today. And it's a real amazing thing, but it wasn't overnight. It was a hard fought battle, but I really believe you can do it. If you're watching this, you absolutely can do it as well. But let's understand where I started here. And I really want to give you guys some context because, how many times, and I would like to hear it from you as well, have you ever felt like you're in a position where you kind of have to show face and you have to kind of pretend you're doing well and pretend you're successful and pretend you're doing amazing, right? Well, that was me for quite a while, because if you look at some of these early photos, these are some early photos, like I'm doing my first business. And I was doing my first business and I was like, yeah, look at me, I'm so successful. The middle photo is like, hey, yeah, I'm on the phone, look at me, I'm a businessman and whatever. Okay, that's cool. But to look at the left photo here, because we really do have to understand something. The left photo, no matter how much you put on a face and you try to show something or try to project something, it doesn't matter, because you could see right through it. Look at this is the proof of where I was. Look at how thin I was. There's literally no muscle there. There's no fat either, right? Oh, that's pretty good, but there's no muscle. There's no muscle on my bones there, right? And I don't know what I'm doing. I'm probably getting a free meal from somebody. I can't even remember who I was eating a meal with, but definitely that meal was not paid for by me, right? Somehow I was able to talk the person into buying a meal from me. I don't know. But just to give you a sense of where I was and like what changed though, since I was in such credit card debt. And in fact, I had defaulted on credit cards. Like, they were in collections. I would just ignore the credit card phone calls. I would just ignore the debt collector phone calls. I would when the student loan, I would always defer the student loan as much as I could. I would always, if I had personal loans, the person might call and say, hey, where's my money? And I'd say, okay, well, I'm going to get it back to you on this date, or I'll get this much back to you. Imagine, and maybe you're in this situation, but imagine what kind of stress and that I was under during that time. And that's not a way to live. It's just not a way to live. Talking about just emotional management, it's not a way to live. And when you're under that kind of stress and pressure, what happens to you? You become demoralized, and it rubs off on everything else you do. You try to be confident in other places. You try to project confidence. And the thing is, it's fake confidence. It's not even real confidence. It's totally fake confidence. And you just feel awful about your life. I mean, you can't even look anybody straight in the eye at that point. So then again, like what changed for me? What changed? Well, here I'm going to start with this book. And regardless of what you think of Robert Kiyosaki, because everybody has so many different whether it's financial opinions or political opinions. Let's put that aside for now and understand Robert Kiyosaki. So this book, the reason I really liked this book and what this book did for me was it helped me to finally understand that how I was going to get my dream lifestyle. Because ever since I was in my my undergrad, I wanted to be a full-time researcher. I wanted to be a full-time lecturer. I wanted to be able to, travel the world and work on different projects and pursue my passion projects and do all of that stuff. Basically, I'll be honest with you, the lifestyle that I'm living today, I'm a digital nomad, essentially. I mean, I'm at home right now, but I have been able to, and I'm grateful every single day, but like I have been able to build a lifestyle where I'm not pinned down to a location. I don't have to trade time for money. It's great. But the thing is that what this helped open my eyes to is that would help me. This concept of passive income was going to be the thing that would help me get to that dream lifestyle. Now, I encourage you to read this book, but on the left side, you see this little, I wish I could use my stylus here. I usually can. I'm sure there's a way to do it on here. I haven't figured it out yet. But anyway, if you look at this quadrant that's on the book, this ESBI, on the left side, that column stands for employee and then self-employed or small business. And on that left side, you're investing an hour of your time and you're getting an hour back, mostly, right? And then on the right side, you are a big business owner or an investor, and that's a totally different way of making income. And what he argues and what he shows, and which is very eye-opening for you to read about and understand for yourself, is the different value systems or the different thought processes and values that different people in these different quadrants have, right? Because that will really help you determine your own values. I'm not saying you have to have passive income. I'm not saying you have to have passive income to become successful, right? If you look at my other content, it's not that way. You can have active income and be very successful. You have to determine what your values are. He's very, very good for helping us determine that. And what does this have to do with me getting out of debt? Well, these books, as I'm showing you these books, there's a progression that I went through from each book, from one book to another. There's a progression of mindset that I went through to discover, okay, how do I actually tackle this thing? How do I get out of this situation? How do I create wealth for myself? How do I get out of debt? How do I become debt-free like I am today? And again, I'm grateful every single day. Like I don't have the financial stress. I literally, hey, you saw the picture of me back there, right? I was literally worried about where the next meal was coming from. So listen, if you've been anywhere and you feel bad about your situation right now, trust me, I've been in bad situations too. I don't like to compare people's situations, right? There is no comparison, I believe, but I'm speaking from a place of having experienced some really bad times in my life. So let's talk about book 2 here, which is Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. And what this helped me realize as well, I was actually reading this years later, kind of skipping around here, but this was a very important book for me. Years later, when I was running my SAT test prep business, I had started to understand, visualization is important. Self-image is important. But this book really struck me. Among all of the other self-help books that I had read, it really struck me. Why? One is because it's so scientifically backed. You read a lot of self-help books out there, and what happens is a lot of them are just personal anecdotes or personal stories. Hey, this is how I became successful. This is how you can too. And there's something in psychology called survivorship bias. It's also in decision theory. It's a little overlap. But there's something called survivorship bias. And what survivorship bias is, and why it's so difficult, such a big problem in self-help books, is that somebody who's talking to you about how they became successful, they will often speak from their own experience. Well, personal experience, that's great, right? Well, it is good. It is valuable. I'm not trying to devalue it, right? But when somebody talks about their own personal experience, you have to understand that that's just one data point. And we have to take into consideration all of the other data points, all of the other experiences of those who did something similar. Did they succeed? Did they fail? Like, if we really want to get to the truth of what were the success factors, what were the factors that you can use out of what they did in order to become successful, you have to look at all the data, not just, oh, this is how I became successful, this is how you can too, right? Because they have another thing called unconscious competence, right? Which is that, they can't, well, I'll simplify it. It's very hard to retrace your own steps of how you did something sometimes, if you're really, really good at it. If you're really, really good at it, there's an old adage, like if you don't know it well enough to teach it, you don't know it well enough. I actually disagree with that. And the psychological literature tends to disagree with that as well. You can be so good at something and be so successful at it that you oversimplify the process and misunderstand the process that it took you to get there. So that's why I love this book. Just getting back to this book for a moment. That's why I love this book, because it is very in tune with the psychological literature. But what it does is it teaches us why, really the brain process of why visualization, imagining your ideal self, how that impacts the results in your life. Why? How does it impact the results in your life? Well, we only have so much focus, right? Our brain is literally filtering out, I don't know the exact number, but so much data. Our brain is filtering out so much data and processing so much data. Your brain has to actually prioritize, right? Otherwise, your conscious mind would be overloaded with so many thoughts at once. You'd go crazy, right? So what determines what your brain prioritizes? What determines that? Very simple. It's determined by, in large part, your self-image, how you see yourself. So there's something in psychology called self-consistency theory. Look it up, self-consistency theory. And what you notice, what your behavior is, the actions you take, the choices you make, a lot of that is due to how you visualize your identity, and literally visualize your identity. So this was a huge wake-up call. This book, I really recommend getting it, reading it, because that's what it did for me. It allowed me to understand the mechanism of how I was visualizing myself and the small things that I was doing, noticing or not noticing, that led to my results. So very, very eye-opening. I really appreciate that book. The next one on this list is book 3. And this was, I will warn you, it is a little bit theoretical, but you do not have to, when you read a book, you do not have to read it always from cover to cover. I know some people will hate me if I say that, but you utilize a book for what the goal is that you need it for, right? At the moment. You can always go back and read other parts later, but the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, this book really made me realize where I was wasting my resources and both time and money. Now, he uses something called the Eisenhower Matrix, and you don't even have to read the book in order to go find this Eisenhower Matrix. You can look it up. It's just called the Eisenhower Matrix. So look it up, and what it is you can categorize, you can actually fill out, right, in your life, where am I spending my time? What activities are both important and urgent? Which activities are urgent but not important? Which activities are important but not urgent? And which activities am I doing that are not important or urgent? And what can I offload? What can I delegate? This really, really helped me. And the exercises in this book really, really helped me not only become a better communicator. Remember, I told you those debt collectors were calling, and the people that, I was always procrastinating paying back, these personal loans because, family, friends and stuff like that, they were calling me to, pay things back. How do I communicate in that situation? How do I do that? And it also helped me to take better responsibility. You know what? I'm in this mess because of some of the choices that I made, and that's okay. It's not about blaming myself. It was about empowering myself. I can make new choices now, right? And so this really helped me shift my mindset big time. I highly recommend this book. Book 4 here, if you're looking, it's funny. I read this at the perfect time in my life. And if you're really looking for a logical book, this is not it. And I mean this in the nicest way. All of the books we went over so far were highly logical. Like, okay, here's here's some principle, right? And here's some idea, and here's some example. This is not like that. Be warned that this book, if you have some some PTSD or you've had some traumatic experiences in life, you may want to be careful when you're reading this book because it may bring back some bad things for you. But the thing is, he's sharing his own experiences. He became a Navy SEAL, right? If you look at the cover, the person behind him is this out of shape, overweight, broke, and he became a Navy SEAL. And for those of you in different, maybe you're watching in a different part of the world, you may not be familiar with Navy SEAL, what that is. It's a really elite, very, very highly elite section of the U.S. military where, you do very elite operations and things like that. And you have to go through all of these physical tests. You have to do almost impossible things mentally and physically. And he went from that to this. And I will say what this gave me is a huge sense of understanding of where I should set my standards. My standards for acceptable behavior, acceptable results for myself was right here. And then when I read this book, it just impacted me so much. Like everything that he's been through, I won't even go into it here. It's very serious stuff that we went through with his father, with his mother, with his family, right? Everything, and physically and everything. It really raised my own standards, helped me raise my own standards, and also emotional resilience. What's one of our problems? It's not that let's be honest. If I'm in debt right now, okay, if you're in debt right now, if I'm in debt right now, if any of us are in debt, the actual actions, and I talk about this a lot in other videos, the actions that we take are not actually that we need to take are not actually that hard physically. It's not like they take tons of energy. I mean, it might take some mental energy. It might take physical energy if you have to work to pay off a debt and these kinds of things. But it's more like we procrastinate or don't want to face it because it's emotionally challenging, right? And so we need to build up that emotional resilience. And so this book was really helpful for helping me build that up. And then book 5 here, and I'll tell you how this all culminated and what this culminated in for me. Extreme Ownership, how U.S. Navy SEALs lead and win. And this is by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And it really opened my eyes to, again, raising my standards further. So it's in the same vein as that. And I started to really, I don't know what it was. I was like, wow, because I don't have a military background or anything, but I just look at these guys in the military and Navy SEALs and all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, I just admire that level of focus, that level of discipline, and that's something that I just started to want to emulate, to become like. So here, this is what it all culminated for me in. I could say these books really solidified my mindset until I said, you know what, let me face the problem. Let me just face this problem. And what I came up with, I mean, I call this the problem solution system. It's not really come on. I mean, I'm just calling it something. If you want to call it that and you want to say, hey, this is, Steve Petro's concept or something, I don't know. I don't even know if it's my concept. Maybe it's somebody else's. but who cares, right? But the idea is that it's very simple. It's a very simple system that I started to use that helped me get tremendous results. And if you've ever heard of Occam's razor, right? The simplest, I'm shortening this a little bit, the simplest explanation is usually the best. Well, the simplest explanation is usually the best. The simplest system usually is the best. What is this? Well, I started, and this was not problems and solutions for myself. Originally, I labeled this as income and expenses. So income on the left, expenses on the right. And it was that simple. I just started with that. And for the longest time, I literally did not track my expenses. For the longest time, I did not track the money going out. You know why? You want to know why? Very simple reason. I really didn't want to know. I was scared to know, right? And have you ever been in a situation like this? Like, can you relate to that? So I didn't want to face that. Because I didn't want to face that, why didn't I want to face it? Right? Because why might you not want to face it? I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to face having to deal with the expense column, right? And looking at my expenses, because I didn't believe that I could fix the problem. So if you don't believe you can fix the problem, that's logical, right? If you don't believe you can fix a problem, why face the problem? So these 5 books really helped me work up to the point where I realized, wow, like I can tackle this problem. Okay. So, and what did I do? So here you can apply this again. Originally it was income and expenses for me, but you can generalize this to problems and solutions. So problems, list out the problems, like get them listed out for yourself. Because if you don't list them out, if we don't articulate them, if we aren't clear, if we aren't honest with ourselves about what the problems are, they will never get solved. And then what we want to do is, and it'll always cause us anxiety. Trust me, I've been there. Like I've been there. You want to talk about constant anxiety? Remember, I told you guys, I had constant anxiety, living in a space of constant anxiety, literally, sometimes, often, not knowing where my next meal was coming from, right? So don't live that way. Take the steps to get out of that. And it's just list out the problems. And on the right side, you just list 2 to 3 potential solutions. Potential, they don't have to be perfect, but potential steps you could take that could get ourselves on the right track to deal with that problem. And so some of that could be like, let's say it could be a phone call that needs to be made to somebody. I need to make this phone call. We'll schedule it, right? If you can't do it immediately, if you can do it immediately, pick up the phone, do it immediately, right? That's what I suggest. If it's something that needs to be scheduled for later, then schedule it, literally schedule. Don't say, okay, yeah, that's a solution, I'll do that. And then you never schedule it, because what gets scheduled gets done. And if it's not scheduled, it's not going to get done. And I'm speaking for myself as well. I'm speaking for myself. And I assume, do you feel the same way? Like, I want to know, is this something that you deal with as well, where if it doesn't get scheduled, it doesn't get done? I think so, right? So list out the solutions, take action immediately, or schedule the steps. Ultimately as well, what really helped me was developing these skill sets, right? And doing something like that is a skill set. So in the link in my bio, in the link in the description, there is a link to my new course that I launched. It's Elixir of Worthiness. It is actually 15 plus years of skills, high income skills, all workbooks and guided classes by me, teaching you directly how to develop a lot of the skill sets to do things like overcoming debt, to do things like building a business, to do things like professional communication, to do things like professional networking and building out your contacts. Like, there are skills to be able to learn this. It's only $27. It literally is only $27, right? Original price was $650. For a limited time, it's only $27 that I'm offering this guide to you, because my mission, a big part of my mission is I want to make high income skills accessible to everybody. So this is one way that I want to do this. So check it out in the description. And thank you guys for spending your time with me. I just want to let you know, I really appreciate when you spend your time with me. Go check out that link in the description. And I'd love to work with you a little bit more, but keep tuning into these live streams because I love spending time with you. I love sharing this experience with you. So take care, guys.